Hopefully this can be seen right now on the side of the UAI. Um, so I'm going to talk about the history of astronomy in Paraguay. Well, this is not intended to be a complete guide, or I'm not going to go through all of the stages of the history of astronomy here. Despite our astronomy history is not, uh, let's say, it's not as traditional as other countries. But I'm going to show you one small part of it, which began in the Middle Ages, and um, and so. So I'm going to talk today about um, first, parallel relations between Halley and Newton, um, and an astronomer from here, from the Middle Ages, from the High Middle Ages, which is depicted in the slide. And in the Middle Ages, Halley was a disciple of Sir Isaac Newton, and as well there was a disciple of him who was called um, Thomas um, Faulkner. He was a Jesuit missionary priest, and he came to the missions in Paraguay and in Argentina, which at the time was called the provinces of the Indies, and that was a province that was between the modern countries, between Argentina and Paraguay. And he came here after he was elected a member of the Royal Society, and he came here to do studies in natural sciences. And as well, he studied the fossils. He discovered one of the first fossils in the region. He discovered the fossil of an armadillo, which is called in the areas of Richard Darwin, is called the old Faulkner. Um, well, he was as well a physician. He worked with the Indians from the Patagonia, which is a region in South Argentina, and he explored the area. And there was a university at the time in, in, in Argentina, in current Argentina, present day Argentina, which is the University of Cordoba, and he worked there. Um, he probably, although we don't know with certainty, he probably observed the Halley comet in 1590, in 1759. Uh, there was as well an astronomer at the time, which worked extensively with the Indians in the missions, in the indigenous missions. Um, he was called Buenaventura Suarez. He was born in currently Santa Fe, which at the time was called Santa Fe de la Veracruz. It's a historical town in Argentina, and in the north of Argentina. Um, he was born there at the time, part of the province of the Plata, which was the predecessor state of Argentina. Um, he was a relative of um, Juan de Garay, which was governor of Paraguay and Argentina, which was called the province of the Plata at the time. And well, he lived his entire life in the region. He was a missionary. However, the missions in this region were big enough to keep him here, and so he never left. He never like went to Europe, or he never went to the Americas, but there were as well Jesuit missions. And he lived here from 1704 to 1550, and he kept two small observatories that were uh, built with or by the hands of the Indians, and he worked mainly his main, like say, his main work was in production of a book called Lunario de un Siglo, and that book contained 33 years of prediction of eclipses, on of movements of the moon, conjunctions, and the like. And that was his most notable work. It was published in Europe. Was published for the first time. Was published in Europe. There were not printing press even in the missions. There weren't printed press. So it was appeared in Europe in 1743. This book was re-edited in Lisboa in 1748, in Barcelona in 1552, in Ecuador, and in Corrientes, which is a city in Argentina, in 1856, when after the independence of these countries, of Argentina and Paraguay, then it appeared in print that his work, and that impression was um, done in the region where there was where the first printing press of the region, which was as well owned by the mission. And well, the book the book at the time was noticeable, and he was due to his work on the conjunctions and eclipses. He was in contact with several astronomers from around the world. He kept correspondence with Edmund Halley, and which is probably, although we don't know, we know from either indirect evidence and from his work at the time, we think, or probably he kept correspondence with Halley. But we do know that he kept correspondence with Ignaz Kogler, which was a royal astronomer of Xi'an and China as well was a successor of Matthew Ricci, which was a missionary, a Jesuit missionary as well. And well, he kept correspondence with Nicolas de la Ile, which was from St. Petersburg, and which with Anders Celsius, which was he was the one who invented the scale that we use to measure temperature in some countries. We use the centigrade scale. Um, well, that's for one part, and we do know as well what his education was, which is not as much as known. Um, so let's talk about his influences. Um, Concerning his influences, as this region was part of the Viceroyalty of Peru, um, the education was oversaw by Lima, and Lima has something called Cosmógrafo Mayor, which is a was a position similar to what at the time has the Kingdom of Spain, which is the Cosmógrafo Mayor of Spain, of course. And well, Peru has something similar, as it was a viceroy in the Americas, so it was a kingdom in the Americas. And Peru has that. And one of the first was Francisco de Quiros, which was actually a navigator, and at the time was heavily used in navigation. In navigation, or if you were to be a navigator, you had to know astronomy, or how would you guide yourself through the stars. And well, Francisco de Quiros published a book called um, um, was more like an annuary. And as well, there was next to him was Diego de Leon and Francisco Ruiz Busano in 1662, and he published his last one published a book called Derroteros de los Mares del Sur, which include a catalog of the stars of first magnitude, which was tradition at the time for navigators to write themselves, and as well published a book called Treatise on Comets. This probably was the first book with astronomy in mind of these people. So this Cosmógrafo Mayor published the first, let's say, the first astronomy book in Americas, and so it was in comets. And next to him was Juan Ramón Koning, which was a professor of the University of San Marcos de Lima. Next to him was Juan de Peralta y Pedro de Peralta y Barnuevo, and next to them there was a Frenchman, which was called Louis Baudin, was a cosmographer until 1749. As well, there was a Jesuit priest, which was the cosmographer of Peru. He was called Juan de Her, and until 1760 he was the cosmographer of Peru. So we know all of these people published annuaries or small notes on astronomy, and we know let's say that there were certain culture in astronomy. So there were people who kept some registers, some notes of what was happening on the skies. Well, as well, there was a visit from a French priest, which was not a Jesuit, and he visited the River Plate and Chile and Peru at the time that Buenaventura Suarez was a student at the University of Portugal. And well, then we know that Suarez was trained therefore in mathematics and astronomy. What we know as well is that as soon as he was trained in this, he went to the missions in San Cosme y Damián, which is in Paraguay currently, and he mounted a small observatory there. And this observatory was modeled after one that used to be in Brazil, in Recife, in the northeast. This was, of course, part of Portugal at the time, and all of the instruments were brought from Europe. Well, since this happened, and he had in mind to be an astronomer himself, so he started to guess how he can do that in this region, and so he gets some instruments from Europe as well. But what we know for sure is that none of these instruments were long living, and so the ones that he has to use, or the one that was mostly used for his work on astronomy, or on keeping the times that the moon rises, the moon, that the sunset of the moon, and the conjunctions for the prediction of eclipses, or his work in general on keeping his annuaries. He uses instruments that were developed in conjunctions with Indians for the missions, from the missions. And what we know for sure as well about these instruments is that he kept two instruments. One of them was of 2.2 meters in length, and the other was 4.16 meters in length. And this is an speculation, but he probably was knowledgeable about infinitesimal infinite calculus, and as well was knowledgeable about the Cartesian method, which was developed during his lifetime by the French philosopher Descartes. Well, that's all that I have to say today about history of astronomy, Paraguay in the Middle Ages, actually. And hope you like it. And next to this, we're going to start a live video about our podcast that we do in Paraguay with some other people, and this is going to be in Spanish. So hopefully you could engage yourself. And that's all on my side for today in English. And thank you for those who was listening.